Hello everyone, welcome to Venture's first ever online Kickoff event. My name is Lea Firmin, I'm the CEO of the Venture Foundation and your host tonight. We're thrilled that so many of you have joined us tonight to celebrate the start of the 2021 edition of the Venture Startup Competition in this virtual setting. When we closed the 2020 edition with an online award ceremony, we were hopeful that we would be able to meet all of you again in person today. Well, this didn't quite play out the way we had wished for. But rest assured that we, the Venture team, and our entire network remain as dedicated as ever to supporting budding startups, pandemic or not. And the virtual setting does have a silver lining for us. It allows us to bring together aspiring participants and our network from across the country in one event. Thus, we can bridge the gap we normally open up between Western and Eastern Switzerland by having two separate events in Lausanne and Zurich. This brings me to the inspiring program we have for you tonight. Our first panel discussion will unite Vanessa Wood, the new Vice President for Knowledge Transfer and Corporate Relations at ETH Zurich, and Ursula Usterla, the incoming VP for Innovation at EPFL. They will discuss with the Venture Grand Prize winners of 2020 and 2019 on what it takes to transition from innovation to entrepreneurship. After this discussion, my colleague Priscilla will give you some more information on the Venture competition. And then you can either join our Retail and Consumer Services winners, Carmen and Sylvia of Nunique, and Venture juror Nancy Govender to learn more on how to put together a winning business case. Or you can go network with some of our mentors, jurors, and alumni in the lounge, or visit us and our co-organizers, ETH Zurich, EPFL, InnoSwiss, and McKinsey at our booth in the arena. A big thank you already at this point to our mentors, jurors, alumni, investors, and co-organizers who have joined us tonight. We greatly appreciate your support. But more to your networking opportunities later. Let's get started with our first panel session. Before I introduce our guests, I'd like to encourage you to ask questions in the Q&A chat of the session panel on the right of your screen. So just simply click on session on the right-hand side and then on Q&A. If you like someone else's question, you can upvote it. I will select some of your questions then and bring them into discussion. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. I'd like to begin with Vanessa Wood. She is the new Vice President for Knowledge Transfer and Corporate Relations at ETH Zurich and a professor at the Institute for Electronics. Next, I'd like to welcome Ursula Usterla, the incoming Vice President for Innovation at EPFL. Before her return to EPFL, she was Vice President for External Innovation for Philip Morris and earlier Swisscom in Silicon Valley. It's absolutely great to have both of you with us tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. Now let's welcome our Grand Prize winners. In 2020, it was Fajer Mushtaq, founder of ETH spin-off Oxyle, who took the trophy home. Oxyle has a novel technology to remove even the most persistent and toxic pollutants from wastewater. And finally, I'd like to welcome Samantha Anderson, founder of EPFL spin-off DePoly. She developed a novel method to recycle PET to create a circular economy for PET plastics. Welcome, ladies. So, Samantha and Fajer, you have transitioned from researchers with an innovative idea to successful entrepreneurs leading a business. This is a sizable leap, and we'd like to explore in this panel discussion what it takes to master it successfully. Let's start by taking a closer look at the beginning of the journey, at how you came up with the idea for your startup. Can you tell us how you knew that you had come up with something that has the potential to be translated into a successful startup? Samantha, please start.
Thanks for organizing everything, and hi to everybody out there. So for us, when we started the project, myself, Chris, and Bardia, there was a lot of information already out there on what needed to be done to solve the plastic problem. There was a lot of pressure being put on big corporates in terms of either adding more recycled plastic into their virgin components or increasing the recyclability. So we knew that there was a need for a solution. And then when we approached this, we looked for the simplest way that we could do it. And so we didn't work on it just from the chemistry side of just trying to solve the problem. We worked on it also on a scalability side of trying to choose chemicals or, stuff to use that when we did scale wouldn't cause further problems like explosions or would be like a persistent toxic chemical that would, ruin the environment. And then when we got everything together, when we looked at it, we thought that that was something that would, work, and we've pursued it ever since. So I don't know if Fajer would like to comment more on this as well.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I thank you for your very honest answer here, Samantha. I think I share a large parts of the way you worked around the problem solving as well. So at Oxyle, we target some of the most persistent, mobile, and toxic micropollutants from wastewater. And if you think about the idea behind it, it has been there for decades and decades. We can all agree we need better treated water, which enters as surface waters and the drinking water. Everyone agrees in that. But if you look at how much progress has been made in this area in the last decades, it's kind of astonishing how we are still using really inefficient treatments, and even the ones that are so unsustainable and release these pollutants into our environment. So going into the project, I knew that there is a need for that. I knew there's a demand for that. We need to contribute as a society. And also, while I was doing my master thesis and doctoral studies at ETH Zurich, I was using quite unsustainable practices myself for treating or disposing of or managing the wastewater that I was producing. So I was participating in this sort of vicious cycle, so to speak. So it was in the beginning, I knew that we need to do something better. And I started really looking around as to what was done so far, what is the missing links, what can we add on to that? And it's sort of this aha moment, if you can say it, that you realize, okay, so this is what we need to do. If you have these properties in the material, it can make a change. So once we had that, we pursued that forward relentlessly for the last 5 years. And then we literally started targeting those pollutants that were hard to remove by the existing treatment. So we really went after them. There's a whole group of them that are considered very problematic. We systematically targeted them one after the other. And when we knew we could remove pretty much all of them by more than 95% removal efficiency, we knew we had something, and we just can't keep it inside the lab. We just can't make a paper out of it. We need to go more to have out there to have a better impact. So that's what we've been doing since then.
Thanks. So let's hear the perspective of the two VPs. At top research universities such as ETH or EPFL, of course, there are new research results galore every day, right? So how do you spot the ones that have the potential to become a spin-off? What are the key ingredients?
Yeah, well, I think it's a little bit along the lines that you heard from the two founders here. I think it's that, wow, that's awesome. And it's both about explaining what the problem is and then being presented with the solution. So I think if when you hear a successful pitch, it should be that feeling, wow, that's so amazing. Why hadn't someone thought of that before? And then you feel like, okay, that's a company that's going to succeed.
There's a lot of fantastic research coming out of the universities, and the question is, how can it have the best impact? So some cases, it makes absolutely sense to make a startup, like the two of you did. But in many cases, there's great research that should actually be integrated in something of a bigger solution out there that maybe more actually goes into a company or in an R&D development or into a company of a system. So not everything coming out of academia should become a startup, but there's plenty that can become a startup, and that the key ingredient is really the customer. Is there a customer behind it who's actually interested in buying? And that brings me actually a question to both of you, Samantha. How did you go about with customer validation, getting customer traction? Because that's the key step as you move out of research into a startup. Can you talk a little bit how you did that?
Yeah, so for us, customer acquisition is a little bit difficult because so all of our customers operate on like the 1 ton to 100,000 ton scale. So for us, operating on a smaller scale and selling them chemicals, it doesn't even make a dent in what they use yearly. So what we do right now is we're talking to our customers and showing them that our chemicals meet, industry standards, that the stuff that they're getting out from virgin petrol, PTA or MEG is the exact same. And then hopefully this will later then secure, for example, binding letter of intents going towards a commercial scale, where then we already have our customers aligned. They know our product, they know who we are. And then we can move towards like a very quick and easy market entry is what we're hoping for.
Yeah, and just to add on to that as well, for the first customer validation I did was on myself. I started treating the wastewater that I was producing during my experiments. So I was the first customer and I liked the results. So after that, I just started really approaching the experts in the wastewater treatment areas and showing them the results. Obviously, not how we do it, the specifics, but just what we can accomplish and which pollutants we can remove. And that opened up the possibility to do our first pilot at a municipal wastewater treatment plant in Switzerland. And we were there for a while. And that was the first pilot really helped us, market our technology and help us really validate it, because we ran it for over a month, 24/7 automated reactors. And we learned a lot, definitely, and the results were also really, really promising. And since then, we were approached by large industries. So we are doing a lot of pilots with some of the larger agrochemical and chemical companies and food companies. So it's going well. It's always how they say to get the first validation in. And in my case, it was easy. I had to convince myself that I could do that and then just convince others. So I took a different route, I think.
So going out, talking to customers is obviously quite different to what you do when you actually research your idea, right? How did you transition from one role to the other?
Oh wow, I think it's a learning curve completely. It was luckily, I think with EPFL and I think ETH is the same. There's a lot of startups in the community that we talk to and a lot of coaches, and they really helped us kind of carve those first steps into. When you start talking to customers, you should have a pitch deck ready. You should have NDAs. You should do A, B, C, D all the way through, Z on, proper etiquette and things like this. And I mean, we are still learning. We're now putting in like CRM systems going forward, making as our company grows and as we have more customers that are going to be there. So I think it's an ever learning kind of way of life now. So it's, yeah.
From my point as well, like how Samantha said, there is a lot of resources at ETH, EPFL, and in general in the Swiss ecosystem where you could really get help and a mentorship and coaching from InnoSwiss. They offer really interesting coaching where you can really talk to the experts in the field and present your ideas to them, and they'll tell you how to sell it, or if the way we've been selling or the storyline that we've been saying, if that's good enough. So you really get a lot of support in terms of how to plan your business model, how to decide your pricing strategy, and also legal help. They want to make sure that your innovation is protected. If you have thought about the right ways that you should protect it before going out there and disclosing these results. So they really guide you through all these processes, which you might not think about when you come right out of the lab. These are not things that you think about. You just want to make sure your product is out there and you can help, but they are very systematic processes you have to follow in order to make sure you don't make a big mistake before you go to investors later on. So there are a lot of resources from InnoSwiss Venture Lab, and I think we took them early on. We took that help even during when I was a PhD student. And I learned a lot of valuable lessons, how to approach potential partners, how to approach potential customers. And I can say if I look back at my pitch deck from 2 years ago and now, I don't know who made the first pitch deck. So you can see their progress, and it's kind of a cringeworthy moment, like, what? So that shows how much help it was given to us by the mentors out there. That's all them, and that's the feedback we get, and we use them. So I think we should all do that, because there's a lot of good feedback out there that we can all use.
And, being transitioning to an entrepreneur, there are a lot of unexpected problems that you didn't kind of expect, that as a researcher one is not used to or not aware of. So what were some of your frustrations that you were encountered with along the journey?
So for us, it was when you start approaching companies to buy or build or create, for example, piping reactors, or anything that you would need in our, for example, our pre-pilot plant or pre-demo plant. A lot of our emails kind of went unanswered, because I think they assume that, who are these guys, right? They're just asking for a small order. We've got bigger fish to deal with. So we had some issues with that at the very start. We were lucky enough to start working with Oesterle in Switzerland, and they were able to put us in contact with these people that would actually respond to our emails and help us out. So I think without them, we really wouldn't have been able to move as fast as we have been able to. And I think for everybody, COVID's been a problem that I think nobody has expected. And even if you have delays, sometimes the suppliers or customers or clients on your side have delays, and it's not a 1 or 2 month delay. It could be a 3 or 4 month delay because of everything that's currently going on. So.
And yeah, for us, I think we really underestimated how quickly everyone will just jump on the idea of a better technology that can solve the water crisis. I thought, we have it, we have the solution, and we'll just enter market very soon, and everyone would like it. It was very naive thinking. What we have realized is how slow this regulatory process is. Industries change when there are regulations, or if you can offer them a better price. But if they've already invested in a treatment, then they have to think about the investment period of that infrastructure, right? So it's a slow process. And I think what we have learned from that is who to approach first, what is a low-hanging fruit really for us. And to do that assessment, it took a while. And working from home last year during the COVID time for those 3 months, that really helped us try to figure out these regulations apply to these industries. They haven't upgraded yet. They're paying high costs. They're paying fines. So we need to talk to them and not the other ones who we thought were our first customers. So just doing that homework and sort of learning how slow some of these processes can be was something I hadn't thought of going into it. But obviously that's something you learn. And we keep learning something new every day with this.
So Vanessa and Ursula, you have talked to many scientists who have gone through this transition. What are your general observations? What are the major difficulties that aspiring entrepreneurs encounter?
Well, I think, as researchers and scientists, we naturally want to understand every part of the problem. And I think that in many ways, this is, an admirable quality. But I think when you start a business, then you have to focus on what you actually need to understand to be successful. You don't need to understand every single detail of how something works. You need to understand what you need to get out of what you need to understand to get out of the problem you're in. And I think we heard some really nice examples of that from Samantha and Fajer already. So it's, I think, using some of the skills we have innately as scientists, but really being able to know when to stop going down one route and change one's mindset maybe a bit more dramatically than one would have to if one just is pursuing a PhD. But I'd love to hear maybe the thoughts from the founders on that. It sounds like you went through some big changes in your concept. And do you feel like you were, did your preparation as a PhD student, prepare you for doing that, or what did you have to learn to do differently now that you're CEOs?
So for my PhD was actually in something completely unrelated to the plastic problem. So I was working on metal organic frameworks, which is really, really small scale. We're talking about you would measure out 2 milligrams of zinc and hopefully you'd get an absorbent material for CO2 capture and storage. So for me, it was really switching that mindset over from okay, how are we going to do this on a small scale and get it to work, to, okay, we're going to start off on a larger scale and then we're going to scale it up. So what are we using and how are we going to, how is that going to impact like down the road? So for example, it was, if you choose the wrong solvents in the first place, what's that going to affect going towards regulation? And yeah, so it was kind of a switch between thinking of kind of that at the moment, I need to get this paper out for my PhD. What do I need to do to get this done? To, okay, I'm going to solve a problem, but what's going to happen in like 10 years? Is this going to affect something? Yeah, it's an interesting switch to say the least.
Yeah, I completely second everything that Samantha said. It's a big shift when you jump from out of the lab and now you want to solve a crisis that is affecting millions and millions of people. It is a big switch, and you have to really be able to adapt and be flexible. Like when we do these experiments in the lab during my PhD, I was making small quantities of these materials, and I was thinking, could we batch fabricate them? And yes, there were strategies of doing that was in place, but we hadn't really figure out, like, if you now switch to making, I don't know, 1,000 times larger volume of these particles for your treatment, would the recipe have to be optimized again? How tricky is that process going to be? And you also have to think about, is the industry going to be ready to accept these nanoparticles or nanostructures for cleaning? And most likely, from our early interactions, we realize they're not. It's something, even if you can guarantee it's safe and you hit in the testing, there are people who are hesitant towards that. So then we had to, after my PhD finished, I had to really figure out, how do I encase these structures into a package that is acceptable in terms of regulation, in terms of customers, and it doesn't make them kind of, get nervous about taking on a new material that they have never used before. So we really had to reinvent the wheel and try to figure out how we don't lose the functionality and the properties of the material, of nanomaterials, and how we can still keep them in the catalyst, but encase them in a way that you can easily upscale, you can batch fabricate, and if you give your recipe to an industrial manufacturing partner, they can follow it. So it should not be that tricky. So there was a lot of hard work that went into that process, and that was not something I thought about doing during my PhD. Like Samantha said, the idea was, let's publish something, or let's try more things, without thinking, how are you going to convince a customer in a different country that this is the right technology for him. So yeah, there's something you have to do, and I think all entrepreneurs go through that very interesting journey.
I have two questions from the audience that I would like to bring into the discussion. First, it's about commercial traction. So how do you deal with the fact that first you have to actually build something to get traction, but before you actually get any traction, you don't really know what to build, right? So how do you solve that?
Ooh, that's maybe Fajer has a better insight into that, and then I can.
Yeah, that's a good question. In our case, that was not such a big problem, because we more or less knew what pollutants they had, and we knew how to treat them. That was not the problem. But the way to do that is to build a prototype that fits into their existing infrastructure, that you can just have a plug-and-play system. So there we had to really talk to the first pilot partner who we had in mind, and we spoke to them, and we went to the location, we saw what is needed for the prototype, and we built the prototype really around the first pilot partner's infrastructure, because we wanted that to go well. And at the same time, we wanted it to be something which we can reuse for other pilots. So there was a lot of thinking around that. But in the first case, we had to know what their regulation problems were, what they couldn't treat, and what space they had in mind, and what flow they wanted for the treatment. So we really had a really direct conversation. We picked the first pilot partner, and we tried to do a good job with them, and we thought we can learn from that. So we just did it like that.
So ours is, I guess.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to get a second one answered, and I was wondering if Ursula maybe had a thought on it. So we have another question that asks, what are the most successful approaches to contacting and engaging corporate customers?
That's a tough one. The biggest thing when you address a corporate customer, you have to understand the problem that they have, okay? Because for them, any time that they spend working with a startup or working with research is cost. and time. And so they have a priority list of their problems that they need to solve. So you really, really need to understand what is their pain point and when is the right timing. Just because a corporate has a problem with this issue, but it may not be bad enough relative to something else. So you really need to understand what problem you're solving for them. And if you come with a solution that solves for them, they will be very keen on working with you. But if you come with something that is not urgent or on their agenda right now, because the budget planning, the budget is planned, okay? So when you come, you're substituting with something that was not planned. So you really have to address the problem. So the key thing is understanding. There are multiple entrances. Most companies have some form of an open innovation or an innovation person, either through a venture fund or through R&D unit that engages with the external world. Those are usually the best entries because they then have the contacts on the inside of the corporates to actually help you find a way. Yeah.
Thanks very much for answering. So the chat is actually, or the Q&A session is actually getting quite lively. Unfortunately, we're already running out of time, but I can reassure you, you will have time to ask more questions to Vanessa and Ursula at the ETH and EPFL booth in the arena, respectively, and to Fajer and Samantha at their tables in the lounge. So we stop here for now, but please, I'd like to encourage you to continue the discussion at the tables. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies, here on this panel. Now, it's time for some more information on the Venture Startup Competition so that those of you in the audience who have a business idea know what to do in order to follow in Fajer and Samantha's footsteps. Priscilla, please, your turn.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ursula Usterla, and I do the marketing and communications here at Venture. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all this evening. And if you are here tonight, it's because you just might have the next winning idea for Venture. And you want to know about the competition and you want to know what it takes to win. So let's delve right in. But before I tell you about the competition, let me address the big elephant in the room, and that is what is at stake? What can you win if you join the Venture competition? Well, if you talk to our alumni tonight, and I definitely encourage you to do so, in the lounge tonight, actually, you will see that most of them say that they had access to an incredibly supportive network of industry experts. And that's something that we're really, really proud of here at Venture. And if you make it to be one of the top 50 finalists, you also have access to mentorship. And you can check out who our mentors are on venture.ch, our website. Every single applicant to the Venture competition, upon request, can receive a 300 franc voucher valid at the Institute of Intellectual Property, which is the IPI, for more information about their intellectual property. And last but not least, we do offer over 500,000 Swiss francs in non-dilutive cash. Non-dilutive meaning no equity, no interest, no strings attached. Okay, so sounds good, right? How do you apply? What do you need to do? Well, what you need is an innovative business idea, okay? And once you have this idea, we want you to put it down on paper, 10 to 20 pages in PDF, in English to be exact. And we call this a business case submission, not a business plan, because this is an early stage startup competition. And we understand that you may not have all the necessary elements to go into a business plan, not just yet anyway. So once you have all of that, there's a couple more boxes you need to tick. And that is at least one of your team members is a legal Swiss resident, and you have the intention of operating in Switzerland. Now, those boxes are ticked. Where can you apply? On venture.ch, and you can apply under one of 5 industry verticals, and that is health and nutrition, retail and consumer services, ICT, industrials and engineering, and finally, finance and insurance. And please mark your calendars. I will repeat this date a couple of times so it stays in your brain. March 24th, 2021 is the deadline to apply. Okay. So now that we know what's at stake, what do you have to do, let me get into really quickly how the competition works. So it's a 4-step process. The first step is a written submission. The rest of the 3 steps are live pitches. And do not worry, we won't let you go pitch by yourself. We will provide you with some training from McKinsey and consulting experts, as well as investors. And you will pitch live to different jurors, and we will determine the top 3 of the industry verticals, of each of the 5 industry verticals. That means we have 15 winners. The first place gets 50,000 francs. Second place, 20,000, and third place, 10,000. Now the first place winners, they actually get a business consulting package from McKinsey and Company, and they battle it out for a chance to win an extra 100,000 Swiss francs and the coveted title of grand prize winner. And they take home a total of 150,000 Swiss francs. And who decides this winner? Glad you asked. And that would be our advisory board. And you will pitch in front of C-level executives of the companies that you see up on your screen. And they make that final decision for us. So before I leave you, let me leave you with a couple of key dates. Now, we have an upcoming event called Introduction to Intellectual Property. And then we have 2 draft feedback events, and I highly encourage you to attend them. The jury, you get to sit down with a juror member and show them your business case submission, ask your burning questions, and sit down one-to-one on them and hear their feedback before you actually submit your application. Then you have the submission deadline, again, March 24th on venture.ch, you can apply. And last but not least, our award ceremony, which usually takes place in June, will be celebrated on September 13th in hopes to have a live in-person celebration together. And one more thing before I go, you can go onto our website, venture.ch, and wait for that pop-up to come up onto your screen. And there you can download our playbook. And that is a step-by-step manual on how the competition works and insights from our jury members on what it takes really to win, what they're really looking for. So don't miss out on that opportunity. And to leave you, I will thank you very much for your attention. And if you have any other questions about the competition, I will be happy to address them in the arena in the Venture booth. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thanks a lot, Priscilla. Again, if you have any questions about Venture, Priscilla and Martino, my colleagues, are available at the Venture booth in the arena. Next up is our second panel session, where you can learn more on how to put together a convincing business case. Our retail and consumer services winners, Silvia and Carmen of Nunique, will relive their experience of their participation in Venture last year. They'll share the struggles they encountered as they wrote their own submissions and the solutions they found along the way. Nancy Govinder, Venture juror and experienced startup mentor, will discuss with Silvia and Carmen and provide her perspective. To join the next session, please bear with us until this session closes, and then as soon as you receive a prompt, click on Join Session. Alternatively, you can go network with some of our mentors, jurors, and alumni in the lounge, together with some hand-picked investors. You can join them by simply taking a seat at their table in the lounge. To do this, go to the lounge on the left side of your page, find the person you would like to join, and click on a chair. This will propel you into a live video session with everyone at the table. Should you wish to attend the next panel discussion, you always have the option to network at the tables afterwards. Please also visit our co-organizers, ETH Zurich, McKinsey, InnoSuisse, and EPFL in the arena. They are happy to introduce you to their own startup support programs and answer your questions. And to repeat any questions you have about Venture, please ask them at the Venture booth. To get there, click on Arena on the left side of the screen, right below Lounge. Once you arrive there, you can join a booth and sit at the table to discuss live in a video chat. And then finally, if you'd like to meet someone new, you can test your luck and get matched with another participant for a 5-minute video chat. To do so, go to the lounge and click on Start Speed Networking in the top tile. If you have any troubles finding your way around on the platform, please write in the event chat on the right of your window, and we'll do our best to assist you. Now, I'd like to thank again our panelists, Vanessa, Ursula, Fajer, and Samantha for joining us tonight, and I look forward to the second session. I will close the session now and hope to see many of you again in the second one in about 2 minutes. Thank you.